Hello everybody, it's Tsuki and welcome back to another video. This time we're going to be finally talking about Scholar at level 70. Now, I did say I was going to post this up a day ago, but I just wanted to take another day to sort of get more familiar with level 70 Scholar, test it out in things like Susanoo and stuff like that at level 70. Although, to be fair, going from 60 to 70 is basically the same thing. I mean, you get a few abilities here and there that kind of change out how you play, but not really. There's no really major job change or job mechanic to really learn on Scholar going from 60 to 70. So I didn't really feel like it changed all that much at 70 comparatively. But yeah, well, there's definitely a lot to talk about Scholar anyway. So we should probably get into it so that I actually have time to do other things this morning. So yeah, let's get started. So I know we had that live letter earlier this weekend, and in the live letter they did actually post some changes that they were planning to make to not just Scholar, but a lot of the jobs actually. But I do kind of want to wait until after they make official changes tomorrow, after the maintenance and everything for 4.05. Before I actually talk about all of those changes. But if I do remember any of the changes while I'm talking about certain things or whatever, I'll probably mention it again if I remember, because I kind of skimmed over all that. So yeah, just a little disclaimer there. If you want to say something in the comments like, oh, they're gonna change this, yeah, well, we'll see tomorrow when they actually do change it and we get the solid information with numbers and everything on it. So yeah, let's get into this before I ramble on too long, right? So let's talk about things that changed about the existing toolkit that Scholars had going into Stormblood. So basically what they had in Heavensward, how that changed, just like with the other two videos I did on the other two healers. So first one, Ruin and Ruin 2, I guess, had their potencies buffed from 80 to 100. Ruin 2 also lost the blind effects, so now it's just an instant cast Ruin, which it still has its place, I guess, so you can still keep Ruin 2 on your bar in case you need to cast something while you need to move, I suppose. I still have it on my bar anyway, even though it is considerably weaker than Broil 2, but, you know, it is what it is. And, yeah, just like with a lot of other jobs, their dots got consolidated. Bio now just automatically turns into Bio 2. And I actually don't think Bio 2 got any extra damage potency with that. So we basically just lost all of the potency of Bio, I believe. Now, I could be wrong. I could be wrong. This Bio 2 could have been less potency. Could have been like 25 potency or 30 potency. I actually didn't pay attention that much to Scholar's potencies back in Heavensward. But yeah, I'm pretty sure this all changed the same. Aetherflow had a pretty big change. Now only restores 10% of maximum MP. Still only a 60-second cast time. Still gives 3 stacks of Aetherflow, but it now only restores 10% of your max MP, just like White Mage's size. Before it used to do 20%, so now it's only 10%. So this got cut in half, but we do get Lucid Dreaming that we can cross-class on Scholar now as well. So it kind of balances out. It's really kind of hard to tell. I mean, you're getting 20% less MP every 2 minutes, so I guess that kind of makes up for it with Lucid Dreaming. That is if their spell costs weren't so dramatically increased, and we'll get to that, trust me. But yeah, let's talk about Bane. So on top of losing Bio, Bane also got completely obliterated and neutered. So it has kind of like the same damage drop-off that you know, abilities like Holy have, Flare, Gravity. Basically Bane now has that same drop-off. Now, back in Heavensward, I think they actually had a pretty decent way of handling Bane's power. Was that I think it was everything after the 4th enemy only got 50% potency of the dots. Now there's like this, you know, it's basically the same as like Holy or Flare, like I said. And it really feels bad, honestly, to use Bane, especially considering the fact we lost Bio, so you're only baning 2 dots now. The fact that Bane does so little damage to everything else is kind of sucks. It really does. I feel like they could maybe pull back a bit on the nerf they did to Bane, but I will not be surprised if they never touch Bane again. So, and honestly, it gets to the point where it isn't very mana efficient. But if there's only like 3 enemies, you might as well just cast Miasma and Bio 2 on them individually, just so you get the full potency of your dots that way before you go into spamming Royalty or whatever, instead of using Bane, because well, you don't save any MP, you do save an 8th of flow stack, so I mean it might balance out, and it won't feel as bad, I guess. But I guess you're losing some GCDs. I don't know what I'm trying to say there, but yeah. And Shadow Flare. This used to be a spell. It used to be a spell. Now it is an ability. It has a 60-second recast time. I believe it still has the same potency. Was it still 50 potency? It might have been actually less potency, but it only lasts 15 seconds now. So you can only have this up basically 25% of the time. Whereas back when it was a spell, it lasted 30 seconds and you could basically cast it as it was about to fall off. So yeah, again, there's a lot less to do with Scholar in terms of combat. It's kind of like simplified, and it doesn't feel very satisfying to DPS as a Scholar anymore. In fact, it feels very... It's almost like you're hitting them with Nerf guns sometimes when it comes to DPSing as Scholar, because Scholar used to be very powerful when it comes to DPSing, and ironically it used to be the healer that DPS'd the most out of the 3. It wasn't very uncommon for Scholars to basically do like 80 to 90% DPS in a fight and leave the majority of the healing to their Faerie and the other healer, and just throwing out the occasional heal and damage mitigation here and there to make sure that people didn't actually die. But now it just doesn't feel very good to DPS as a Scholar. You have a lot less things to keep track of. You lost two major dots basically. Bane is absolutely terrible. It's just, I don't know. They saw how powerful Scholar was, and they just kind of took a little bit too far with the nerfs, I think. So hopefully they can reevaluate things and sort of make things a little bit more right with Scholar, because Scholar feels really off right now. It's still very viable. I mean, it's still playable, you can still get through content, but it just doesn't feel as good. And I'm only talking about the DPS side. When we get to the healing side, I mean, that's something else entirely. So yeah. So this is just the basic action traits. So let's talk about the job traits that are unique to Scholar. So yeah, Sacred Soil, Lustrate, and Dom. Deployment tactics, emergency tactics, dissipation, all basically remain the same. Same with Broil, I think. I think Broil might have actually gotten a slight buff. I don't know. 190 seems like a weird number to me. So I think Broil got a slight buff here. But again, we got major nerfs to our dots, so it's not really a DPS gain. So, but as Ad Loquium, so the function of Ad Loquium didn't really change, but what did change is the MP cost, which is absolutely ridiculous. So Ad Loquium at level 70 costs 1800 MP. So I think Medica costs like 1440 or something like that. In fact, we can actually just check right now. Hold on, let me just hop onto White Mage real quick. 1680 for Medica. I think Astrologian is 1440, yeah. So I got those mixed up. But basically, Ad Loquium costs more to cast than an AoE heal, which is kind of ridiculous to think about. But yeah, Sucre as well. Sucre, again, didn't have any of its potency changed or anything. It still has the same potency. 150 cure potency with the shield equaling that. And if you deployment tactics, it's basically the same thing as Medica, except that it costs considerably more MP. 600 more than White Mage's Medica. So yeah, is really the big issue with healing as a Scholar. One of the big issues anyway is the fact that Ad Loquium and Sucre cost so much MP. Now, you can just we can complain about Ad Loquium and Sucre all we want and be like, oh, please just tone down the MP cost, and maybe they'll shave off a few hundred MP cost on these two abilities going forward. Who knows what they actually will do. But that really doesn't solve the problem with Astrologian's healing capabilities itself. It's just really lacking compared to the other two healers. I mean, you look at Astrologian, it has like a flat 10% healing buff on Diurnal Sect and 15% on Nocturnal, which is just ridiculous. I mean, you look at Adloquium. Adloquium costs 1800. Nocturnal aspect of benefit is 1440. Nocturnal aspect of benefit is instant cast, and it's pretty much better in every way to Nocturnal's or to Adloquium, except that Adloquium has that, you know, double potency when you shield, which is a little bit stronger, and you can also deployment tactics it. I guess that's really the main benefit Adloquium has over Nocturnal shielding with aspected benefit. But yeah, Adloquium and Sucker, I definitely would like to see the MP cost reduced just a little bit, because I mean, Cure 2 is like 1080, right? And then yeah, so like Scholars don't have like a Cure 2, right? So if they need a bigger heal, you kind of have to lean on Adloquium or Lustrate, and since Lustrate requires a certain resource to use, you can't always lean on Lustrate when you need the bigger heal, so you lean on Adloquium, and you deploy or emergency tactics Adloquium if you need more healing rather than the shield. But Adloquium just costs a little too much, and it just runs your MP dry way too quickly. So I'll talk more about this when I actually talk about healing as a scholar in general, and not just the abilities itself. But I feel like we should move on for now before I just get really just dug into my own like ranty self. So let's just move on and stop with the rambling, I guess. So let's talk about the pet abilities now, because some of these did change a little bit. So Embrace. So I think back in A Realm Reborn, the cast time for Embrace was only 1 second, and the potency was 300. And we'll talk about the cure potency, but it is on paper 250, but that's not really true. And again, we'll talk about that later when I talk about healing. But now it has a 2-second cast time, which I think back in Heavensward is when they added the cast time to 2 seconds. I could be wrong, but it was still 300 potency for Embrace back in Heavensward. Now it's 2-second cast time and also 250 potency cure. Or so it says. Again, we'll talk about that later. So Embrace really did get neutered, and you'll probably hear all the craze about how Chocobos are healing more than Eos is. More than double than Eos and Selene are, which is pretty sad. So yeah, there's definitely some issues here with the Faerie just being very underwhelming and very underpowered, which you could argue it was really overpowered back in A Realm Reborn and back in Heavensward. But again, they really took it maybe a little too far with the fairies, and now they're just they don't really feel like they do very much, really, honestly, if I'm being honest. But you know, the healing of Embrace inside, we still have the abilities that we can use on them. Now Silent Dusk is just as useless as it was back in the other two expansions. So yeah, it's a silence, very unreliable to use. So just if you ever do need a silence, make sure that one of the jobs that can cross-class a silence takes it, because you're not going to be using Silent Dust to silence anything. Trust me on that one. So I think Whispering Dawn is the same thing as it was before. Fey Covenant is the same thing that it was before. Fey Illumination, though, did get nerfed. Now, I do believe this used to be 20% increased spell-based healing for, you know, everyone around Eos. Now it's only 10%. I feel like this is more of a balancing change for the fact that Scholars now have access to Largis. So we get Largis now, which we really didn't have anything other than Fey Illumination for self-buffing our healing potencies. So this is probably why, since we got Largis going into Stormblood, why Fey Illumination saw that sort of nerf. So I feel like while it does suck, it's a fair trade-off to get Largis. Fey Caress, exactly the same, and Fey Wind is exactly the same as it was back in Heavensward. So now let's just talk about the new abilities they get. So they get 4 new abilities, just like the other 2 healers. Broil 2, just an enhanced version of Broil, more damage on this really don't need to talk about it. Does look cool though. As unsatisfactory as DPSing a Scholar feels, Broil 2 does look cool. It's basically like an orange Imperial Arrow, basically. But you can cast it all the time. You can just spam it, unlike Imperial Arrow has a 15-second recast. But tangent, let's get back on track. So let's talk about the other 3 abilities. So we have Excognition. So yeah, this ability. Now I do recall they did say they were going to buff this. How they're going to buff it, I don't know how. But basically what it is, it's kind of like a timed lustrate, if that makes sense. So lustrate, it does 600 potency, instant cast. You can spam lustrates 3 in a row if you have the stacks to do so. It costs 1 Aetherflow gauge, 1 Aetherflow gauge cost. And same with Excog, it has a 60-second recast, instant cast. But what this does is it puts a buff on a party member, and whenever that party member falls below 50%, it instantly does the cure potency of 650, which is only 50 more potency than lustrate, and it has to go off within 30 seconds or it just wears off. So now it's very underwhelming. So I am glad that they are buffing this. I'm curious to see how they buff it and how much they buff it by. But it's very underwhelming, and when I got this ability, I thought I would like it more because I didn't read that it actually costs an Aetherflow gauge. I thought this was actually just a healing ability that you could just throw out every 60 seconds, kind of just like Essential Dignity or Tetragrammaton or something like that. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. But no, it costs an Aetherflow gauge. And then as I started to think about it and compare it to lustrate, it's like really all not that different. The main benefit that this has over lustrate is that you can set it beforehand. So like, you know, when the tank is going to take a pretty big hit, you throw Excog on them. You know, you get mitigation up, get add low. They have their defensive cooldowns, and if the tank buster still, you know, drops them below 50%, this will instantly give them that 650 cure, basically. Whereas if you know, if you're doing lustrate, then you have to actually manually do it on them. So that's really the main benefit this has over lustrate, and I guess it's 50 potency more than lustrate. Yeah, that's really it. It's kind of a boring ability. Like, I see where they're going with it, but it's just not powerful enough to really make it interesting. Now, if they do buff it, maybe another 100 potency or something like that, it will have a little bit more value. But again, it's still kind of a boring ability. It has a place, but again, that doesn't mean that it's an interesting ability. It's just like Broil 2 basically, or Malefic 2, or I should say Malefic 3, or Stone 4. It's like, yeah, it's there and it has its use, but it's not particularly interesting to get. So Excognition, you can also use this like if a party member is already below 50%. You can throw this on them instead of lustrate and get that extra 50 potency cure off of your out of your stack. Although, you know, you are putting this on cooldown, so if you do need it later for something, then you know, keep that in mind. But yeah, Excognition, it has its uses. It's actually pretty nice to use on tank busters, but it's fairly uninteresting. It's kind of like the Lily system. You know, it has its use and it's very practical to use in certain situations, but not very interesting. Chain Stratagem. It's basically a reverse internal release, so a targeted internal release, I should say. So the way Chain Stratagem works, very simply, you put this on an enemy, so preferably the boss, and the enemy takes critical hits at a rate of 15% more, basically. So it lasts 15 seconds. It only has a 2-minute cooldown. It's basically more DPS for the raid, just kind of like Trick Attack, basically how that works. And you know, you can line it up with Trick Attack, every other Trick Attack, since it's a 2-minute cooldown. If you're, you know, coordinating those things with the raid. It's just nice to throw out there. You know, monks will love you, bards will love you. You know, all the DPS, I guess, will love you, but bards and monks especially. But yeah, Chain Stratagem, again, it's there, not particularly interesting. It has a really cool animation at the very least. And then we get to Aether Pack / Fae Union. So Aether Pack is the actual ability, and Fae Union is I don't even know how to explain it. They're basically, it's the same ability, but Fey Union is the thing that's actually being casted, I guess, by your fairy. So Aether Pack. So once you get to 70, you get a new sort of system to use. Kind of like how white mages have Planetary Indulgence and they have their new system to use. Although Aether Pack is a little less, new, I guess. So basically, every time you use an Aetherful stack on an ability, you get Tane Fairy Gauge, which goes up to 100, and then as long as you have any Fairy Gauge, you can cast this on a party member, and this will basically make your fairy unable to do anything while they are channeling basically a tether to the party member of your choice, which basically just puts a regen on them. So it's basically just a regen, and I don't know why they had to make it so convoluted, so complicated, just to give scholars a regen. I really don't. So the problem with this is that, for one, there's actually a really long animation to this. So you know what? Let's just go test this out. Let's go to Yanja and we'll go test this out so you can kind of see. So there's several problems with Aether Flow or Aether Packs that need to be addressed. So let's get some stacks out. Let's get our fairy back out, because I ended up changing jobs. And where are the striking dummies out here? I know there are striking dummies out here somewhere. Wow, this is really good to do in the middle of a video, right? Go looking for the striking dummies. Although, to be fair, I guess we don't actually need striking dummies. We just need an enemy to get our Aetherflow gauge out. Yeah, I don't remember where the striking dummies are in this area. So we're just gonna go attack an enemy. Hello, Rhino Beetle. Be my dummy, would you kindly? Alright, so let's get into battle. And let's summon Est here, so we have a party member to actually cast this on. And let's also put this put Est into healer mode, so he doesn't actually kill the enemy. So right now I'm just building up gauge. Basically, you build gauge just by using your Aetherful abilities, 10 for every ability you use. So essentially, it takes you about 3 minutes to get up to 90, which is one tick basically eats up 10 gauge. So basically you get 3 ticks for every Aetherflow stack, or Aetherflow usage, I should say. And by Aetherflow I mean the actual ability, not like one stack. So every minute you get 3 ticks basically from your Aetherflow gauge use. And there you can see just how much more powerful my Chocobo is healing compared to Eos. But so let's go ahead and let's use Aether Pack on S. So as you can see, S doesn't get it right away, so there's sort of like this delay. And you can argue that, you know, when you cast Regen, when you cast Aspect of Effect, unless it's like coinciding with the server tick, you're not going to get the how do I say this? The effect of the heal right away. Alright, so let's get out of battle real quick, because now I'm getting distracted by this very intense music. Alright, so change of plans. Let's just head back to my company house, because I can just use the striking dummies there. Now, that's one of the big issues with Aether Pact, is that it's kind of a long animation. You know, you have to tell your fairy, hey, go tether to this person and start the regen, which is very convoluted for something as simple as a regen, I kind of feel. And another big problem with Aether Pact is that it requires you to tether to the person, which is a problem because if you're like me, you like to kind of toss your fairy out into like a position like on the field, right? Usually you'll find a nice spot to put them, you know, maybe out of the way or maybe out to the side of the arena where they can still basically reach the tank and the party, but they're, you know, out of harm's way of like all the AoEs and all that stuff, so that they don't actually end up dying in the middle of the fight. And the problem with this is that Aether Pact only has a 10 yalm range, which is fairly short. I mean, you look at your traditional heal, you have a 30 yalm range on Physic, but this you have to it's a 10 yalm range, and if you have your Faerie, when you cast this, your Faerie stays rooted. They don't move, I'm pretty sure. So if your tank is like moving to dodge out of an AoE, or has to reposition the boss for some reason, because believe it or not, boss mechanics require you to move sometimes across the arena back and forth. This will break the Fae Union and break Aether Pact, and you'll have to recast it, which is fairly annoying if you're trying to rely on that to actually heal them. So yeah, Aether Pact, it has a lot of problems. Also, it says 480 potency, but that's not really true. In fact, we should have stayed out in the field so that I could actually show this to you. But we'll get to that when we talk about healing as a scholar in general. So let me get back to this. So yeah, Aether Pact, I understand. I understand the concept, right? It's the same thing with Planetary Indulgence. I understand the concept, but it's just executed very poorly, and it's honestly way more convoluted than it has to be for a simple regen. It could just be that you get a Faerie gauge, and then your Faerie casts a regen, and there's no need for a tether, and you can end it whenever you want. That's it. That's all you have to do. You don't have to have this ridiculous tether. You don't have to have an animation to tether to a party member. You don't have to have this ridiculous range, because you know what? If you cast regen on the tank and then you move away, the regen doesn't wear off, so I don't know. I think they should just completely get rid of the tether and completely get rid of the animation and just make it so that, Aether Pact is just a regen, and just make it simple just like that. And it's kind of boring, but it's there. The system's already there, and it can be helpful theoretically as long as you can actually get the regen to work consistently, you know what I mean? So I think that's how they should really handle that moving onward. So let's okay, let's go to somewhere where I actually know where the striking dummies are out in the world, because I do need a party member to actually cast Aether Pact on. I guess I could just cast it on myself, can't I? I actually don't know. I've never actually tried to cast Aether Pact on myself, but with all of the nonsense with not being able to cast on yourself, I wouldn't be surprised if you can't cast Aether Pact on yourself. But I guess I should know that, huh? I mean, I've only had Scholar to level 70 for like 36 hours or something like that. But we're already here, so let's just move out here. Alright, so let's get into battle real quick, and let's build up the gauge again. Because there is something I would like to show about Aether Pact and about healing potencies on your Faerie in general. Because it is kind of a lie, and it's not something that you wouldn't really notice unless you're actually paying attention. And I found it kind of weird, so I actually started to pay attention. Now, I don't know if it was like this back in Heavensward or Realm Reborn, but basically, the potencies on your pet aren't actually the potencies they are actually doing. So when this says that Embrace is doing 250 potency, it's not. At least not your 250 potency that your character is putting out. And I don't really understand why they're kind of saying this is a certain potency, but it's not really that potency. And the same goes for Aether Pact. So let's look at Aether Pact, right? Aether Pact, Fae Union, says it has a 480 cure potency. Now my Physic has a 400 cure potency, so theoretically Aether Pact should be doing more than my Physic. Oh, look at that, we can't cast it on ourselves. So as you can see, this is how much Aether Pact's doing, 480 potency according to it. But when I cast Physic, oh, well, that's not a very good example, is it? 7,700, 7,400. compared to like 6,000. But Aether Pact is supposed to be doing more, right? It's supposed to be doing 80 more cure potency. So I don't know what is really up with the cure potencies. So I calculated out it's more like a 320 potency cure on Fey Union. So yeah, and then let me bring out this ancient macro I made forever ago, if I can actually navigate to my macro menu. So this basically just combines Physic and Embrace so that you could get both of those on the same target. Let me just put this down, and we'll cast Physic and Embrace on myself. Now, Embrace is supposed to do 250 potency, right? So it should be doing at least more than half of Physic is doing, but it doesn't. Okay, that's a bad example. A crit. Again. Crit. So as you can see here, I'm doing about 77,000 to like 7,500, and Eos is pretty much consistently doing about a little around like 3,200, 3,100, which is again less than it says it should be doing, right? So if you calculate this out, it's more along the lines of like 180 to like 170 potency on Embrace, which is really terrible, honestly. So I don't really know what's going on with the potencies on your fairies, because it's not really truthful, I guess. Now, if they just wanted to say, Embrace, it's actually 180 potency cure, not 250. I'd be fine if it actually said that in the tooltip. It would freaking suck, because that's ridiculous. That's a ridiculously weak heal for a fairy to be doing. And again, the same thing with Fey Union. If it said, this is actually a 320, 340 potency regen. But again, it says 480. So you're thinking, oh, it's actually more powerful than it is. But it really isn't. And that's really a big gripe I have with the tooltips and the heal scaling on pets. And I'm not entirely sure why pets aren't scaling the same way you are. Now they could say, your pet doesn't have the same scaling, but for simplicity's sake, they should just have it scale the same way your character does. And if they want to make the heal that weak, they should just say cure potency 180 on Embrace, rather than say 250 and it not actually being 250, because even me, as someone who played Scholar since back in A Realm Reborn, it was like one of the first jobs actually I got to max level back in A Realm Reborn. I didn't actually notice that my fairy was doing less potency than the tooltip was saying until I realized just how freaking weak the fairy was when I was doing content in dungeons. So yeah, that really was something that bothered me going in, and I'm not sure if it's actually been like this for 4 years and I just never noticed. I don't know how many people are actually aware of the fact that the tooltips aren't exactly accurate when it comes to fairy healing potencies. I didn't actually test it out, but I'm pretty sure if we tested Whispering Dawn, it probably would be less than it actually says with the 100 cure potency as well. I didn't actually test that, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's actually much weaker. So yeah, that was one thing that really bothered me when I actually decided to test it myself. I don't know. I didn't look it up on online to see if there were other people who are testing it as well, or if this has been a thing for 4 years and I just never noticed. But I definitely did notice back when I was healing and leveling Scholar, and how weak basically my fairy was doing in terms of healing. And let's just put that all aside and let's talk about healing in general for Scholar. It doesn't feel good. It really doesn't. So let me as I'm just getting all these sale notifications, let me put my normal physic back on my bar. So when it comes to healing on White Mage and Astrologian, Physic, or I should say Cure and Benefic, your base single target heal has a way of interacting with their bigger heal. Benefic has a way of interacting with Benefic 2 to make Benefic 2 stronger, make Benefic 2 automatically crit, with that 15% chance when you cast Benefic 1. Similarly with Cure, you have that chance to make your Cure 2 not cost MP. However, there is nothing like that for Physic that interacts with anything on Scholar, which is really annoying, you know. So, you know, we go into the traits here. All of it's pretty self-explanatory. I didn't really talk about this. I'll talk about it later. But we also lost the trait for that made crit a little bit better on Scholar, which was like the 20% chance that when your Faerie crit healed something, you got like a spell speed buff for like 10 seconds or something. It was kind of niche and you didn't really rely on it all that much, but it is gone, so you know it's not there anymore. So, but yeah, when it comes to healing with Physic, where every time you use Physic, there's nothing interacting with anything else in your healing toolkit to make anything else stronger. You know, Physic doesn't make your ad loquium stronger, doesn't make your ad loquium cost anything less, it doesn't do anything like that. So when it comes down to it, and you need to be outputting heals and you're spamming Physic, you don't have that reassurance that, oh, spamming Physic is going to make sure that, or is going to give me the chance that I can, you know, cast a bigger heal and be more effective that way. You know, that's the same way that Astrologian and White Mage have with casting their base heal, right? And it really does suck because you're just spamming Physic over and over again, and you're spamming Physic because you need to heal, but you don't have MP to be casting Adloquium over and over again. You don't have 8th flow stacked to cast Lustrate over and over again, so you just have to use Physic, right? And it just doesn't feel good when your tank goes to pull a bunch and they're just taking a ton of damage, or when things are going wrong and everyone's taking damage, when you know when your stupid samurai is just so busy doing damage that they don't move their thunder to the other side on Susano and hits the party, and you know, and then just everything just combusts and everyone's taking damage, people are dying, and you're trying to just keep everybody alive. You don't have any more Aether Flow stacked. You're running really low on MP. You know, you have maybe 20% of your MP left. You know, Lucid's on cooldown, Aether Flow's on cooldown, and you have nothing, and you have barely any MP left, and you're just trying to keep everybody alive. It doesn't feel good, you know, because you go to use Sucker, that's like half of the MP you have left. You go to use Adlocum, that's like half the MP you have left. You're just trying to get by using nothing but Physic and hoping that, you know, your Faerie stays alive long enough to cast their like weak 180 potency Embrace. And it doesn't feel good when it comes to saving the day with heals as Scholar, because you don't have anything, because everything is just so tied to your Aether Flow stacks. And that's really what I'm trying to get at, is that one, Physic doesn't have any interaction with the rest of your toolkit, and then the rest of your healing toolkit other than Physic that isn't connected to Aether Flow costs so much MP, and then on the other side of that, all of your other non-spell based heals are all connected to Aether Flow. That is not counting, you know, the heals from your Faerie, you know, Embrace and all that. And that's really what I'm trying to get at with Scholar, and that's really the change that I'm looking forward to moving forward. And I'm not expecting anything like this coming tomorrow or even in 4.1. It's really something they probably would have to work on going into like 5.0 or something. And that's reworking Scholar so that there isn't so much emphasis on Aether Flow. And basically what I'm trying to say is Scholars need something else to rely on when it comes to healing. You know, when they need to heal, they can't be relying on Adloquium and Sucker because it just costs too much MP. You know, these are meant to be mitigation tools. They're not really meant to heal big amounts. Now, you can say, oh, you have Emergency Tactics. This sits on a 30-second cooldown, Emergency Tactics, right? So you can't just use this to spam bigger heals. And on top of that, Adloquium costs extremely more MP to cast than a Cure 2 or a Benefic 2, and on top of that, even take into account, you know, 300 Cure potency, and then the heal from that, that's a 600 potency heal for 1800 MP. You know, if I go check on White Mage, Cure 2, 1200 MP, and this is a 650 potency heal, And then I go to top on Astrologian, only 1080 MP. That's again a 650 potency heal, I do believe, right? Yeah, 650 potency. So Ad Loquium, you know, on top of costing way more than either of those spells, is doing less. Plus, you need a 30-second cooldown in order to actually make it that bigger heal, rather than just the shield mitigation that it's actually initially designed for. Now, I do recall they are changing emergency tactics, I believe. Was it emergency tactics? It was either emergency tactics or deployment tactics to reduce. Now, I really do think that they should reduce emergency tactics down to like 10 seconds or even 5 seconds. Because the fact that this sits on the 30-second cooldown is kind of ridiculous to me, because when we need actual heals and not just shield mitigation, we need it. So I really do think that they need to change this to like 5 seconds. It's not going to make Scholar overpowered or anything. They need the option. We need the option on Scholar to be able to throw out actual big heals when we need it. Especially considering the fact that when it comes to AoE damage, if we don't have Indom up, and if we don't have Whispering Dawn up, or we're just not even using Aeos, we're using Selene, the only, you know, healing we have for AoE is Succor, which is a whole 150 potency. So, you know, being able to even get access to just something with the same potency as Medica, we have to use emergency tactics. It's a mess, right? So make emergency tactics like a 5-second cooldown. It's not going to make it overpowered. We need that option available to us. So let's get back on topic with healing as Scholar. So one thing I would like to see change is have Physic do something for the rest of your healing toolkit. Make it so that, you know, Physic makes your Ad Loquium cost less or something. It makes it so that your Succor costs less. You know, make it so that, I don't know, something. You know, Physic needs to interact with the rest of your toolkit, kind of like how Cure does, kind of like how Benefic 1 does. And I think that, you know, considering how much MP that it takes to cast Ad Loquium, that making it so that maybe, you know, there's a 20% chance that Ad Loquium costs, you know, 33% less, you know, so it's 1200 MP, so it's not like a full on, you know, 50%, 33% less, 1200 MP for an Ad Loquium is not insane, you know. It's double the cost of a Physic. That's perfectly fine, I think, number to shoot for. And then also, I don't know, like, when it comes to single target healing, we should have something that Physic does to make it easier for us. Make it so that maybe Physic, at 20% chance that when you cast Physic, your next Physic will do another, you know, 150 potency or something like that. You know, we need an option so that when we're spamming Physic, we can actually input some bigger heals because of it, you know. If we don't have access to Aether Flow stacks to use Lustrate and stuff like that, we need something so that Physic can be a little more potent, a little more viable to use, so that when we are spamming Physic to just barely keeping people alive, to have that reassurance that, you know, this can actually save the day somehow. You know, I don't even know what I'm trying to say. I want Scholar's healing to feel a little more consistent, a little more less reliant on the Aether Flow system. So let's move away from Physic and Ad Loquium and Succor, and let's talk about the Aether Flow system. So we get three stacks to use every minute, and we have several abilities to use this on. So we have Energy Drain, which is, you know, 150 potency damage, plus we get a little MP and HP back. It's quite a considerable amount of MP back as well. I think it's like, I don't know if I'm pretty sure it's not percentage based, but it's like about 7-8% compared to how much piety I have now. And other than that, we have Sacred Soil, we have Lustrate, we have Indomitability, and now we also have Excog. So we have 5 different abilities that use Aether Flow stacks. 4 of them are directed towards healing and mitigation. 3 of them are heals themselves. Now, because we have these powerful heals that are also instant casts, they decided to lock them behind Aether Flow. Now, this is where I feel like they could have taken a different direction with Excogitation. Now, I think having Lustrate and Indomitability use Aether Flow, you know, fine. I think those are fine. Those have always been that way. They don't need to change that. But when it comes to XCOG, if they had just relied on the recast time and taken out the 8th full cost, it would have been fine. You know, they could have kept the same potency, even maybe lowered the potency, I don't know. But just something to give to scholars that just doesn't rely on 8th flow so much. There's so much emphasis on 8th flow, and we get so little 8th flow to use every minute that it's just, it doesn't feel good. And I mean, you go look at the other healers, right? Go look at White Mage. So they have Cure 2, they have Regen as well. And then you look at their abilities, they have Asylum every 90 seconds, they have a Size every minute, they have Tetragrammaton every minute, they have Benediction every 3 minutes. None of these are using any special resource that they have to expend other than their recast time. Now, Indomitability and XCOG have a pretty, lengthy recast time. XCOG has a minute, Indom has 30 seconds. Lustrate, you can pretty much spam one after the other if you really wanted to and had the stacks. But, these have cooldowns for a reason. But they also cost an Aetherflow gauge, right? Whereas you look at White Mage, there's no resource, but they have, longer cooldowns. You can argue, XCOG, Tetragrammaton has a 700 potency instant cast. XCOG, same recast time, 650 potency, but it also has this, weird other ability attached to it so that, you can cast it beforehand, and if the target dips below 50%, it automatically uses it. Whatever, that could be the little quirk that makes it so that it does less potency than Tetragrammaton, but it's still like the same ability, right? Except that XCOG also uses an 8th flow stack. So it's really just, there's too much emphasis, there's too much limited healing capability in Scholar right now. The fact that they increased ad loquium's cost so high that it's 3 physics to use ad loquium, which is insane in my opinion. And then they have nothing else. Basically, if we can't use ad loquium consistently to help us with our single target healing, then all we have left is physic and whatever our Faerie can manage to output with Embrace, which isn't a whole lot to rely on when you're trying to keep people alive, or trying to, when your tank is taking a lot of damage because maybe, they're pulling a lot, or, whatever, then, relying on just Fibmic spam it does not feel good. It doesn't feel like you're gaining any ground. It just feels like the tank is dipping lower and lower, and when the tank's cooldowns run out, when you run out of Aetherflow stacks, they're just going to keep dipping lower and lower. So I feel like there's a couple ways I feel like they can go with this. So one way is to make it so that, like I said, Physic interacts somehow to make healing a little more accessible and easier. Make it so that Physic makes your next Physic stronger. There's a chance to make your next Physic stronger, like, and I'm saying this in the same way like Cure and Benefic have to make, Benefic 2 and Cure 2 easier to use in some way. Free Cure for Cure 2, and the instant or the guaranteed crit for Benefic 2. So like maybe a 20% chance when you cast Physic, your next Physic is buffed by 50% potency or something. Make it so that 20% chance when you cast Physic, you get 33% MP cost off your next ad loquium. 50% chance that when you, or 50% chance, like 20% chance when you cast Physic, maybe you get an 8th flow stack back. And that sounds powerful until you think about what your 8th flow stack does. It lets you heal more, yes, but again, all of your powerful heals are locked behind 8th flow, and you only get 3 of them a minute. And I don't know, I feel like they're just, maybe they can increase the amount of stacks we have. Maybe they can just start moving away from the 8th flow stack, emphasis, and make it so that things like XCOG don't cost any 8th flow stacks. and just leave it for Lustrate, leave it for Indom, leave it for Sacred Soil and Energy Drain, and then just from now on just start making abilities to give to Scholar that just they can use when they don't have any Aetherflow stacks. Because again, when you don't have Aetherflow stacks, when you're running low on MP, you have nothing but Physic, and it just does not feel good. And you can argue, once that minute comes up, you get your Aetherflow stacks. You're probably gonna burn through those. If you're in a situation where you desperately need those 3 Aetherflow stacks to get caught up, you're probably gonna burn at least two of those, maybe all of them, all at once, and then just to get caught up. And now you're still gonna fall behind in that next minute, and by that time maybe you wipe or something. So yeah, that's really, I don't know, this sounded very ranty, very rambly. I apologize. Like, this is a lot less concise than it is with White Mage and Astrologian, whereas I felt very comfortable with how White Mage and Astrologian were. I knew exactly what the problems I had with those were, but when it comes to Scholars, there's just so much that feels off about it, that just feels wrong, that just doesn't feel satisfying, that I don't actually know how I would like it to go. I definitely think they need to change the way that Scholar heals somehow. Like, they need to change. Scholars need a way to heal more consistently, because Ad Loquium and Sucker, yes, you can emergency tactics them to make them more comparable to Medica and like a Cure 2, but again, emergency tactics has too long of a cooldown to make that viable, and they cost too much MP to make that viable as well. And then so you're left only with Physic. And then the rest of your healing abilities, on top of having cooldowns like Excog and like Indomitability, are also locked behind your Aetherflow stacks. So maybe increase your Aetherflow stack that you get, because again, we're separate from Summoner, so if they can change it so that Scholar is a completely different thing, and as a healer, it's a little different to have more stacks on Scholar than it is to have more stacks on Summoner, because Summoner's a DPS, Scholar's a healer, and we actively need stacks on Scholar to access some of our best and biggest heals, right? So maybe make it so that we get more stacks, make it so that we get more stacks. You get 4 stacks every minute. Now, I did forget to touch upon this, but we do have the Quicken Aetherflow trait, right? So 20% chance that when you use an Aetherflow ability, Aetherflow is reduced by 10%. This doesn't feel good, right? This doesn't feel great at all, because you get 3 chances to reduce the cooldown by 10 seconds, and 20% chance is just, it doesn't really pan out, right? So like maybe once every 2 Aetherflows you get that one ability that makes it go down 10 seconds faster. I feel like they should have just stuck with a crit route when it comes to this, so that it's the 20% chance that when you crit heal, you crit with your Physic or whatever, this goes down by 5 seconds or whatever. The cooldown on Aetherflow goes down by 5 seconds or whatever. I think that would have been a better way of using this trait, since there's such a big emphasis on crit on healers anyway. But again, this doesn't feel good. This doesn't activate enough to actually make healing feel a lot more consistent. And yeah, that's really my biggest gripe with Scholar is now. It's just, it doesn't feel satisfying to heal. It doesn't feel satisfying to DPS. When big damage goes out, it feels good as a White Mage to throw out Medica 2. When you get that big split damage AoE and everyone's stacked up and you can throw out Cure 3, it feels great. When everyone's stacked up for big damage and you throw out Collective Unconscious on Astrologian, it feels great. When you can just pop light speed and just spam heals over and over again, when there's just a constant flow of AoE damage going out on Astrologian, it feels good. But it doesn't feel good to expend your valuable stacks to use something like Indomitability, and then also realize that the next time AoE damage goes out, you're not going to have Indom, so you're just going to have to rely on Emergency Tactics Sucker, which is not even that powerful for the amount of MP you're casting, right? So, yeah, I really would like to see some major changes to the way healing is on Scholar. I mean, DPSing is, you know, that's a completely different monster, but like healing is the most important aspect for me on Scholar. I want healing to feel more consistent. I want healing to feel better, you know. So to recap, I want Physic to have an effect on the rest of your healing Tsuki. Make it so that Physic can have a chance to make your Aether Flow cool down faster, maybe has a chance to give you another stack if that's not overpowered. You know, make it have a chance to make your ad locum cost less, something, you know, make it so that your next Physic is more powerful, something to make healing a little more or a little less stressful for scholars when they actually need to throw out a lot of heals in a short amount of time. And then also moving a little more further away from Aether Flow, making it so that things like Excogitation shouldn't have to use an Aether Flow stack, just make it a longer cooldown. You know, if 60 seconds isn't long enough, change it to 90 seconds, you know, so that it doesn't have to use an Aether Flow stack, something like that. It's just, healing on Scholar does not feel satisfying, DPSing on Scholar does not feel satisfying, and Scholar, while it works, you know, as long as you're coordinating well and meshing well with the other healer, it works. You know, as a healer, it's completely functional, but it doesn't feel good to play Scholar, in my opinion. You know, some people might like how Scholar plays now. They're probably in the minority because I'm pretty sure everybody is just very dissatisfied with how Scholar is playing now, especially considering how powerful it used to be back in A Realm Reborn, back in Heaven's Word. Scholar just does not feel good to play right now. It doesn't feel fun. You know, when I was doing Susano earlier on Scholar, it did not feel fun, you know, at all. You know, I wanted to just go back to playing on Astrologian, go back to playing on White Mage, because it just did not feel fun on playing on Scholar in Susano. So I don't know, right now. I just this video felt a lot more like a rant than it did an actual, you know, thoughts and overview. But I don't know, Scholar does not feel good right now. It really doesn't. And hopefully the changes coming tomorrow help to alleviate that. But again, I'm not expecting any huge changes for any of the jobs. But who knows? Maybe I could be wrong. Maybe they are making some major changes, and it'll feel great when I get to play it tomorrow morning or something. You know, after the patch has gone live and maintenance is over. But as it stands now, Scholar, it's functional. It's basically, it's kind of in the same spot that Astrologian was at the beginning of Heaven's Word. If you guys even remember where Astrologian was at the beginning of Heaven's Word, where yes, it was completely viable, but it just didn't feel that satisfying to play. So I don't know. I don't know if Scholar's gonna get the Astrologian treatment where it just kind of gradually gets stronger again as the patches go by, because it took a while for Astrologian to sort of reach the powerhouse state that it was at the end of Heaven's Word. You know, it took them a while, so they took a lot of small changes here and there, small buffs here and there for Astrologian to get to where it was in Heaven's Word, to how powerful it was in Heaven's Word. So I don't know if they're going to take that approach, or if they're just going to drop a bunch of big changes tomorrow and then drop a lot of more changes on 4.1 and just fix everything. I don't know. But as it stands now, Scholar it doesn't feel satisfying to play, and honestly, I'd rather just play White Mage or Astrologian in just about every situation. So yeah, I think I'm gonna end this video now before I rant on for any longer. I don't even feel comfortable calling this a thoughts. Maybe I'll call this a thoughts and rant video on Scholar, because I feel like I was a lot more messy in this video, and I don't know, maybe some people like that. I'm pretty sure people will find that annoying, but I'll still post it anyway, because I said I was gonna post this, right? So yeah, that is my thoughts on Scholar right now. It's perfectly viable. Doesn't feel fun to play. Doesn't feel satisfying to play. It feels very underpowered, and Yeah, I really hope that they make changes to the healing and make changes to the DPS. I mean, just about everything on Scholar just doesn't feel right. You know, everything feels just a little off. The healing feels off because of the weird, just how much it costs for Adloquium for Sucker, and just the fact that emergency tactics is on such a long cooldown. The fact that the Faerie is so weak and that the tooltips are very misleading and misguiding, and also the fact that there's just so much emphasis on Aetherflow, uh, when it's completely separate from Summoner now, so they can change how Scholar functions and not have to worry about changing how Summoner functions as well. They're two separate jobs now, mind you, so they can do that. So I don't know. I don't know how they're going to change Scholar. I don't know the best way to change Scholar. Again, I'm not a developer, so I was just throwing out ideas that I thought would be nice, to see. And if any of those ideas actually end up being balanced enough for the devs to put in, then great. Hopefully they put those in. But yeah, as it stands now, even with getting some things like Largis, getting things like Lucid Dreaming, from the role action system, Scholar's just really in a really not fun place for me, in my opinion. It's just not fun to play Scholar. I'd rather play the other two healers in just about every situation, and I really hope that they just kind of reevaluate Scholar and make some changes to it. Cause like, I mean, look at Bard, right? So like Bard had a very drastic change from Heavensward to how it plays now in Stormblood, and I feel like they can do the same thing with Scholar. Although I feel like they'd be very it'd be very bold of them to do that mid expansion, right? But they can do that if they do decide to. So I don't know. I mean, if you think about also Warrior back in 2.0, Warrior played a very specific way, and 2.1, man, Warrior changed a lot. Like there was a lot of big changes to Warrior, to the fact that you almost played Warrior in a completely different way. So they can change Scholar in that same way. So I hopefully, something changes with Scholar tomorrow, something changes in 4.1, because I want to like Scholar. I've always played all three healers. I've always had more of an emphasis on White Mage and Astrologian. Scholars was usually the one I played the least, but I did like playing Scholar on occasion, and I would like to continue to play Scholar and all three healers throughout the expansion, because yeah, I like being a healer, and the fact that one of the healers just feels so much weaker and so unsatisfying compared to the other two really does. It just it makes me sad. I really want to like Scholar, but it's really hard to right now. So I need to end the video, because I've spent too long on this video, and I'm gonna get a lot of hate on this video probably. So I might as well just end the video and get it over with, right? So yeah, let me know your own thoughts on Scholar if you made it this far. I'm sure a lot of you probably tuned out a long time ago, but some of you like to listen to me rant on stuff. So here's another hour-long video for you guys. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on Scholar if you think my ideas are any good. If you have any ideas of your own, feel free to share those. And yeah, hopefully Scholar is fun soon, because I would really like to play it. I think there was a lot of good changes going forward with Scholar. I think change stratagem. I think excogitation, while not very interesting, were cool additions to Scholar. Nice additions to Scholar, I should say. Just there needs to be a better execution of Scholar going forward, because I don't know, just not satisfying on the DPS front, not satisfying on the Faerie front, not satisfying on the healing front. None of Scholar feels satisfying to me right now. So yeah, I need to end the video now. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. That would be probably talking about the changes that come tomorrow in 4.05. Probably an overview on all the job changes that they happen to do, since we already kind of have an idea of what they're going to do to Scholar. And I don't know. We'll see what happens, right? So they're planning to change Planetary Indulgence as well. So we'll see what happens in that video. So thank you all for watching. If you made it this far, apologize for the ranty tone and how messy and disorganized this one was, especially in comparison to the other two, which weren't even that organized to begin with either. So Yeah, I've been talking for an hour. I need something to drink and I need to go eat breakfast. And I need to take a break from Final Fantasy 14 because I've been playing all weekend. So thank you all for watching. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Talking about patch 4.05 changes. So yeah, see you there. Sayonara. Bye bye.